Good morning. Good to be here. Voting machines. The House Finance Committee overwhelmingly supported the request that came to us from the Senate for over $100 million. It's like, I think $135 million, give or take, for the purchase of new voting machines to have ready for this fall's election that the county boards of commissioners had requested of us. Why is that important? We're concerned about the integrity and the reliability of the old voting machine. By having them in place this election, it allows both staff and the electorate alike a chance to experiment with them, get used to them before 2020. Now, it would obviously we have an election this fall. It's too late for that because there has to be a purchase and there has to be training. But that's why we're focusing on 19, that off-year election. Turnout will be moderate to heavy in some areas this fall. This is not the time to have a test drive, if you will. But by voting this legislation out, having it ready in 19, we're ready for 2020. That legislation is in serious jeopardy unless we can get moving in the House right now and select a speaker, because our list of days on the calendar are quickly dwindling. By the end of June, there will be no chance for any kind of a session. I don't know if a president pro tem, according to the rules, and this is why there's a sense of urgency, can, on the calendar, because only the speaker can, schedule days of legislation. So if we don't move through quickly the June calendar, and this is delayed, the purchase of the voting machines is delayed until the next scheduled time after November, there may not be enough time to get this ready to go for the May primaries, perhaps still for the next set of elections in the fall of 19. But the point is, it's legislation that's been passed, it's waiting to get moving, and that too is caught in this bottleneck. And as we well know, Ohio is a critical state with respect to presidential elections, and we don't want to become the next Florida. So it's critical that we get this bill moving. We've had witnesses testify to that effect. There's also been some demonstrations for us with respect to the voting machines themselves. They're fairly easy to use. But yes, a paper trail for validation purpose is critically important, and that will be included in this paper. The last presidential election and how important Ohio's role was, we have to get it right. I mean, the nation, indeed, potentially the world, depends on us making sure that we have accurate results, that they are untainted, that they are indeed verifiable, so that we can conduct free and fair elections. Payday lending has been on the table now for well over a year. In fact, it's a bipartisan piece of legislation. HB 123 is the exact title. And what this would do, and I'm just going to summarize here for our listeners, monthly payments and interest rates would be capped so that borrowers wouldn't get caught under mountains of debt. 28% per year. Currently, some of our people sign contracts that's over 500%, and they have to ask for another loan to pay off the original loan, and because of the predatory practices, they just never get out of debt. There is also a limit. They cannot pay, according to the bill, more interest than the original amount, face amount of the loan, which was asked for. And I know that seems incredulous to most people. Why would you pay more interest than what you asked to borrow in terms of principal in the first place? But that's the loophole that the payday lenders have been able to use to circumnavigate, or circumvent, I should say, the law, the last reforms that were passed, I think, 2008. Here's how distorted this legislation is. We have received mountains of mail from people asking me not to vote in favor of this bill. Their fear is, and I think the payday lenders themselves have fed this fear, and it's not true, that the bill would prohibit payday lending. not to be the case. It just protects consumers from high interest rates and from then and imagine this. Imagine having money for a car loan and you get near the end and you can't make the last payment and you've paid all this interest and then they repossess your car too. And so those are some of the predatory ideas that we're trying to rein in. So no, this does not prohibit anyone from getting a short-term loan. It just caps it and it makes it safer for those people who need this sort of thing. So the mail I've been getting, in fact, some of it has the return address of some of the payday lenders themselves. So these people have gone in, payday lenders have apparently asked them to write to their legislators. And this is mail from not only Ohio, I've been getting mail from Pennsylvania asking us not to support this bill. And I want to make clear to my folks that this bill does not prohibit their ability to get a short-term loan, but we're here to protect them from the predatory practices of these unscrupulous lenders. Another bill I'm a joint sponsor on, bipartisan, is HB 643, which addresses in part the algal blooms in the Great Lakes. This spring, of course, the Ohio EPA issued its findings, and in the western Lake Erie Basin, according to the report, 80% of the phosphorus loading comes to us from agriculture. And I've been working closely with the Farm Bureau, Farmers Union, they understand it as well. And the delicate balance is this. We know on one hand, we have to feed an ever-increasing world population. We also know that unlike other areas of the world, think California, think the West Coast, Oregon, Washington to some extent, we receive copious amounts of rain. We can deliver. Some of the areas of California were challenged. So there's more pressure on Ohio ag to deliver enough food to help feed the world. On the other hand, because of our rain and because of fertilization that has taken place, and it's just not in the ag industry to think lawns, think golf courses. There are other contributors, the other 20%, municipal sewers, leaking septic tanks, that sort of thing. But what this bill would do would try to strike a balance so that we can have predictable, clean drinking water for Lake Erie. Now, here's what it does in the short run. It allocates money, several $1,000,000, for the enlargement of Stone Lab, the research center in the far end of Lake Erie, floatable buoys, additional equipment, monitoring equipment, so that we can get real-time information as it unfolds. Part of the problem in the Toledo water crisis was that they did not receive that information in a timely fashion. And then the alarm bells went off and chaos ensued. I mean, you are talking several 100,000 people without water for several days. The other problem with Toledo is the fact their water intake, yes, it is 3 miles out into the lake. It's only in 15 feet of water because it is so shallow. So more research, more monitoring. In addition to that, provide several $1,000,000 for boots on the ground for soil and water conservation folks so that we can help with phosphorus management plans and manure management plans, for better conservation practices, for education, so that our ag folks are more accustomed to the challenges that we now face. In addition to that, it would also allow plans to be developed for riparian buffer strips, those filter strips along the bodies of water. What do we plant? How do we maintain them? And how do we keep that at the edge of field, those phosphorus from running in to our tributaries? In addition to that, I can tell you that we would be looking to address the issue of the municipal water plants, sewer systems, I should say, in particular, and the disposal of dredging material. Now, here at home, had a conversation a couple weeks ago with Jim Hockaday. In fact, he came down and testified, city manager Hockaday of Conneaut, he came down and testified in favor of this bill, looking to dredge Conneaut again, as we must about every other year in 2020. The current EPA standards, in conjunction with the Army Corps of Engineers, would prohibit open lake dumping. That is the cheapest form of disposal of this waste. The problem is you still have phosphorus in the lake water. So what this bill does is to provide, again, research and explore other means of the elimination in a more economic fashion of this material. Upland dumpling, it's called. Can we take this material and use it again, perhaps in terms of road fill and road beds? Could it be repurposed once more for agricultural sake? Don't know, but we won't know unless we research it. We do know that we can't continue to dump it out in the lake. So 643 is just the start of really some bold efforts on behalf of the state legislature to address this problem. The other bill, in conjunction with this, actually it's a resolution to put before, and I'm a joint sponsor in it, the Ohio voters, is a bond issue that would provide for up to $100 million a year for a 10-year period, which is $1 billion, to assist in all the foregoing: municipal sewer plant upgrades, dredging, research. It's a full-blown way of financing this issue, because if we don't get it right, and Lake Erie is in peril, not only is the commercial and recreational sport fishing industry in jeopardy, water quality is a major factor. Industrial firms would be under stress as well, because without the clean water that they need to continue operation, I mean, a whole lot of things depend on our clean lake. And it's an investment, if you will, in the future. And so I'm very proud of our efforts to put this potentially before the voters, assuming it gets out of the legislature, to see what they would think and what they would bear, as we all share in the efforts. Now, I want to add a footnote to this too. As we have a phosphorus loading issue in the northern part of Ohio, in the south it's a nitrate issue. And there are red algal blooms in the Gulf of Mexico from the Mississippi Valley, and one of the valleys that feeds the Mississippi is the Ohio Valley. A few springs ago, I think it was 3 years ago now, in the Scioto River Valley, just north of Columbus, there was a drinking advisory for pregnant women. It occurred in May, because there had been a great downpour. Fertilizer had washed into the Scioto, filled with nitrates, and as such, the water plants couldn't filter this out safely, and pregnant women were advised not to drink it. Point of the matter is, phosphorus in the north, nitrates in the south. Ohio, as an agricultural state and as an industrial state, has to take its responsibility seriously in terms of addressing water quality issues around the entire state, not just in the western Lake Erie Basin. The last budget, we're talking now about a local food coordinator. I was able to insert language to fund a pilot program for the entire state of Ohio, right here in Northeast Ohio, Ashtabula, Geauga, Trumbull Lake. We do have a local food coordinator in place. He's working now under the direction of David Marison, OSU Extension in Jefferson. And his mission is to unite our producers in the field, apples, cherries, you name it, milk, with our local population in terms of consumption. And we last year worked for a local food. There were several days where our cafeterias throughout Ashtabula County were trying to serve as much local food as possible. It's not only fresher, containing more nutrients, we know how it's been raised, but it also helps to circulate those local food dollars. That is now in place. He came on board March, April this year. Now it's June, and I know he's gotten his feet on the ground. I'm anxious to see the work that he has done to bring all these folks together and with the task ultimately of having his work, our work, being replicated in other areas of the state. If we can recycle the food within the local production and the local consumption in our state, it will make a massive economic stimulus package, if you will, for the agricultural folks right here in Ohio. So I'm anxious to see how that continues to play out over the next few months. Here's another first for Northeast Ohio, a living snow fence. We've been working with Becky Armstrong and ODOT for over a year now to come up with snow fence of a different type. At the corner of Blake Road and Route 20, that's where Edgewood High School is, Route 20 tends to drift. And so the idea was, and we presented this to the Edgewood School Board, Buckeye School Board, to actually plant miscanthus there. It could be harvested. It would be full height in the winter months, thus blocking the drifting snow, and then it could be used for production after that. But it's maintained, think of the partnerships here, it's maintained by some of the classes, some of the students at Edgewood High School. It also has a pollinator garden with it, which is critically important. And I know ODOT has been, if you've been to the corner of 167, the intersection, I should say, 167 and 11 and 307 and 11, they've planted pollinator gardens, 5 acres there. We're concerned about bees and other pollinators, and that area is constantly mowed. We saw it, when I say we, Becky and I, saw that as a place where grass perennials would be planted that would be helpful for our pollinators, wouldn't need to be mowed, that would be pleasant aesthetically and serve a dual purpose. So we've taken that concept, applied it to the miscanthus grass, and in conjunction with the Ashtabula County Master Gardeners, David Marison's been involved in that, the miscanthus folks, Alaterra Energy, the greenhouse folks at ATAC actually raised some of the miscanthus plants over the winter, and of course Edgewood high school students and the Buckeye School Board. So a multi-group effort here to solve a problem in the most naturalistic ways possible. So another good news story is first time and first of its kind in the state of Ohio, right here in Ashtabula County. I can tell you this. There are only 14 scenic rivers in the state of Ohio. Three of the 14 run through Ashtabula County. Pontiac Creek, which is also partly wild and scenic, Ashtabula River, and of course the Grand River, which is also partly wild, find their way through Ashtabula County. We are working, and here's a slogan, 15 for 50, 15 for 50, 50 years, 15 you might add. What would that be? Pymatuning Creek, also under consideration as a scenic waterway. We would be and if you think about that, that would mean that all of our tributaries, every single tributary in Ashtabula County would be scenic river potential. Pymatuning obviously flows southward near High River, but we're hoping to make that the 15th. Imagine 4 of the 15, a quarter of all those in Ohio, right here in Ashtabula County. So good news on that front. In fact, we call them the Blue Trails, the Blue Trail. And if you've noticed, the preponderance of kayaks in Conneaut Harbor, in Ashtabula Harbor, and even around our citizens on their car racks and such traveling around, we are becoming a destination for kayaking because a lot of folks truly enjoy the pristine nature of our scenic rivers. And out on the sandbar in Conneaut, there is quite a bird population all along the lake shore, along Pymatuning, the Conneaut Creek, the Ashtabula River. My goodness, I was talking to one of my constituents the other day. There are a couple eagles nesting, 2 eaglets that were born just this spring, right along the Ashtabula River. And a few years ago, when we dedicated the park down by the hospital, the Ashtabula River, at 3 o'clock, there was a flyover by an eagle. Point of the matter is, they're here, they're healthy, And as such, it's another dimension of our natural beauty and our balance between economic progress and environmental preservation that we're trying to seek here as we move forward. And I might add, as of this point, tourism, and not only is it the birders, it's the kayakers, it's the cyclists. We have a large cycling population here in Asheville County. It is the wineries, all of that. The last figures were $325 million a year that tourism begets Asheville County. And that was based on figures of study 2 or 3 years ago. The new numbers are coming out within days of this interview, and I'm anxious to see what Stephanie Siegel unveils to us, but it's certainly going to be more than that figure. Now, critics will say you can't live on tourism, and I get that. But where would we be without it? It has served as a band-aid as we've gone through this transition from heavy industrial and military-based jobs in production here along the North Coast to a new economy, and the likes of which we're still exploring. The tourism has provided a band-aid in that transition from the old economy to the new. So it's critically important, and our birders are part of that greater parcel. You know that they're going to have another RAM clinic in April. Yep, they're going to next year. And I have legislation, again, bipartisan, that passed out of committee unanimously, waiting to go to the House floor. It's another one of those bills that would waive the fee of out-of-state providers coming in to volunteer their services in Ohio to Ohio residents up to 7 days. And that was part of the challenge we face, especially with optometrists. We couldn't get enough to cross the state lines to come in. Now, we did get enough to get through this year, but they worked some very, very long days, and they were very appreciative of the work they did. But by waiving the fees, the way current law is in Ohio, if you practice in Ohio, you need a license, and that costs a fairly good amount of money. It would make sense for some to come in for a short-term license. So this would waive the fee if they're giving of their services voluntarily to a RAM clinic. I can tell you that the second RAM clinic that Ohio was supposed to have, and this is according to my sources, was canceled because they couldn't get enough volunteers. Ours went off without a hitch. It was absolutely fantastic. And they're coming back, and the decision was made just last week to come back again in April. And the RAM folks are excited to do just that. And I'm wanting to get this legislation through to help in that effort. Barb Klingensmith and I have been working on a project called Feed the Hope. And this will be conducted during the Week of Hope in September of this year. And here's the background of the story. My wife and I attended a national leadership conference a few years ago. And the idea of part of the conference was to teach us to be a better and a more humble servant. So there were 40 of us who packaged macaroni and cheese meals for kids of economically challenged backgrounds, I should say. We did something like 10,000 meals in an hour and a half, 2 hours time. So I brought that idea back to Barb with the hope that we could do this county-wide. So this spring, we have raised $15,000 to cover the cost of the raw materials. In September of this year, we will need, and we have over 100 already, 250 volunteers to package 50,000 meals in about 2 hours' time. Here's the beauty of the whole thing. The money was raised locally, the meals will be packaged locally, and they're going to our local food banks. Through Country Neighbor and Barb's efforts there, nearly 20% of our senior citizens rely on our food banks. And so the menu that we selected reflects their dietary preferences, shall we say. When I packaged the macaroni and cheese meals, it was designed specifically for the kids. This is designed for adults. And I forget exactly what we're going to be putting together. But imagine, Bill, 50,000 meals packaged. And you've got to be there to see this put together. Assembly lines with competition. It is going to be wonderful. The Asheville County 4-H building, September 14th, this fall. I take great pride in working diligently for all corners of the 99th District, from Conneaut to Chardon, Geneva to Jefferson, and all points in between. And as such, uh, care very much. And we're going to come back the next installment. I'll have some news for you on the school funding work group that I've been involved with now uh, for many years, 6 years now. Work's coming to fruition. But uh, as we move forward, I am really excited and I remain convinced of the hope that we have for our district as we transition into the fully in terms of economic development in 21st century. Good things are happening here. We need to realize it. There's a certain energy, a certain vitality, a spring in our step that is critically important. And I want to be able to share more good news with you, and I will in our next installment. Until then, we'll just keep pushing the ball forward forever, for all of us, all the time.